Hello everybody and welcome to the stream. Might be the final stream of the year, I don't know. It will definitely be the last live recording, podcast live recording of the year. There's going to be another Private Citizen episode, which I'm probably going to record tomorrow, but I'm not going to do that live. That's going to be the year roundup. I don't think it's, I won't do that live. I didn't do it last, well, I think I wasn't doing live recordings at that point. But anyway, I don't think it doesn't have to be live. So it's going to be last one. I might do some streams next week, but I don't know. I've had the vaccination kind of knocked me out, so I've lost some time. So I got some work to do. So I was originally not going to work between Christmas and New Year, but I'll have to. So I don't know. But maybe I'll have some free time. I'll do some streams. I think I won't do the Blue Bricks build this year. Might do that, postpone that to next year. But I might just stream some Witcher. I need to pick that up again at some point. And after seeing the Netflix series, I'm hyped again. We'll see, but no promises. Tonight, of course, we're going to record Private Citizen, as always, with the normal ground rules. This is going to be a regular episode, pretty much the last one. And then after that, I'm going to do, the one I'm going to probably do tomorrow. I will release next year, I think. Next week. Next year. It's going to be where's the one I did, like this. I'm going to do a roundup. Yeah. What the hell is all this? Okay, this is not going to be this year. I stopped like on the 2nd of December last year. Apparently, I can't even remember that. But that's the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to categorize all the episodes, in topics again, like for the whole year. And then I'm going to quickly, go through those and talk about them. But, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to record that live. I'm going to do that offline, so to speak. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Cyberbunker verdict, which I promised, and it's been a while. Hello, Astral. How are you doing? I am alive. I'm doing well. I'll talk on the show a little bit about my renewed vaccination experience. Also, got an early Christmas present. I got my watch back from the watchmaker, and it's working again. And waterproof again, and well looked after. That's pretty cool. Anyway, let's do the obligatory test recording. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I think that's actually. I think I can turn up the microphone a little bit. Hello. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Hello. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Yeah. I think that's good. Is that actually peaking? No, I think that's good. All right. Delete all of that. Right. I think I'll take it away then, and we'll go right for it. See you on the other side, right? Here we go. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 102 for Wednesday, the 22nd of December, 2021. The Cyberbunker verdict. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Fab. I'm coming to you live from Düsseldorf. This is I'm live streaming this on Twitch as I record it. This is gonna be the last live recorded episode of the year. There's gonna be another one soon that I'm just gonna record and then put out probably in the following week. We will see. My schedule has changed, obviously. We're gonna talk about a little bit about that in a second and why that happened. Nice to have you along. I'm happy that you're listening. Today, this is going to be a regular episode, pretty much. We're going to talk about, and it's on a Wednesday, although that's pretty much by chance. I'm going to talk about the Cyberbunker verdict. I promised to do that. Obviously last year when the lawsuit started, I told you I'll keep you up to date on it. So, since there's a verdict now, that's kind of part of it. There wasn't actually that much interesting in between. So that's why I didn't do another episode. I didn't drop the ball on it or anything. It was basically pretty much just details. Everything was pretty much clear from the first session of the court that I'd been at and that I reported on in that episode. That was episode 43, by the way. That was when was this? On the 20th of October last year. Yeah, and so now we have a verdict. Actually, we had a verdict this last week. I think it's been. I've had so much to do. I don't even know what time it is. Pretty much last week, Monday. I'm now catching up to it. Obviously, I had the episode with Mike before that, and then it just took me some time to get this going. So we're going to talk about that today. And with that, I'm pretty much into housekeeping already. So we'll have this episode, and then there'll be a year-end, wrap-up episode that I've started this tradition last year. I'm going to do this year as well. That's going to be 103, and then it's going to be it for this year. I'm probably going to release that next week. So I was originally had planned to be done by now and, have a bit of a break between Christmas and New Year's. But I won't be able to. And, I still have some Lafroig left. So I'm going to have some of that. I recommend you settle in with a drink, If you don't drink alcohol, a nice tea maybe, or some coffee, depending on what time of the day it is for you as well. And if you're driving, obviously, I don't know, whatever you can do, settle back anyway, relax a little bit. So, my plans completely went to shit, so to speak, because I got on Friday, so this is, we have Wednesday now. Last Friday, I got my my third dose of the vaccine for SARS-CoV-2, as they like to call it, the jab. I got the third jab, the booster, which turned out to be, in my case, BioNTech again. So the first dose I got was AstraZeneca, and then I got BioNTech, and now they gave me BioNTech again. And I'd kind of worked this out, so it was on a Friday, so that I could, because I knew I was going to react to it pretty heavily. I did this before. And I knew this was going to happen again, so I wanted to minimize the time that time lost, and that was but I pretty much, so the first time the first vaccine knocked me out for 4 days. The second time was a little bit better. That was 3 days. I pretty much lost 5 days this time around, which means I've now lost 12 days of productivity to this fucking vaccine, And as I'm basically getting vaccinated, I don't think I'm in any risk. I would probably have stopped, I probably wouldn't have gotten this vaccine if it was up to me, but alas, it isn't. It's kind of like heavy societal pressure, and I like to travel, and I like to go to events. So and I'm a journalist. It's kind of in my job to go to places. So I kind of, bit the bullet. But I would like it would be nice if the German government would I don't know, give me money now. Because unlike many people, I'm not an employee, so I'm not getting paid while I'm lying in bed feeling horrible, which is shit. As a freelancer, self-employed person, you're just basically fucked. Yeah. And I was doing this over the weekend because I was like, wanted to minimize the time lost. But I have so much work that I would have actually worked through the weekend. And now everything's, I'm massively behind. I'm behind with these podcast episodes and with everything. So I'm going to have to work through the, between Christmas and New Year's pretty much. But yeah, I had pretty much the same. So the second time around, I didn't get all side effects. I didn't vomit, and the headaches were okay. But I pretty much got the same situation going than I had the first time I got it. So, I got the vaccine. About an hour later, I started feeling really woozy. Actually, was at the bakery. I wanted to get some bread as well, and then I was like, "Oh God, I gotta have to go home really quickly, otherwise I'm gonna throw up in the bakery." And I went home, and I basically made it home, and I just made it to the toilet, and when started vomiting my breakfast. But it was like the first time. It was like one vomit attack, and then that was gone. And then I had dizziness, and I had all the other stuff. I had like fever. I was feeling hot. I was feeling cold. I was feeling hot and cold at the same time. Headaches. Then I got migraines. I got light sensitivity. General dizziness, bone ache, muscle ache, systemically, so in the whole body, but also just in the arm. So that arm pretty much hurt for 3 days, but many people report that. That seems to be relatively normal. But I got the weird rashes again, starting on the arm and then going across my body down towards my genitals. So pretty much all the symptoms again. I'm pretty sure. It has to be it can't be like the dose, like the specific dose. It can't. I don't think it's since I now had the exact same reaction with AstraZeneca and BioNTech. I'm pretty sure it's just it has to be the spike protein. I've got hay fever, so I have a little bit of a history of being allergic. So I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to it. Like 1 hour after getting the shot, like my body going, and I never vomit. Like I have to say, I've never been. The only time I've ever vomited when I was sick was when I had I once had salmonella infection. That was really bad. But otherwise, I generally never throw up. Also, I have to say, aside from that salmonella infection and the one time I got the flu, like actually influenza, I've never been this sick. Like I've never actually had a virus, anything that made me this sick now, which like this consistently makes me. It's all first world problems, right? If Yevgeny's listening to this, he's like, "Geez, man, I ended up in a coma. Shut the fuck up, man." But like it's bad enough that like if I had the choice, I wouldn't actually get, because I'm not a. I'm 38. I don't have any health issues as far as I can tell. I've never spent a single day in a hospital. I'm actually fitter than I ever was in my life right now. I've been doing a lot of exercise and shit. So I think I would just skip it now. But it seems to be we have to get it every 6 months now. So I'm planning on being out 4 days every 6 months now. I don't think this will let up, at all. There is some hope that they're developing another vaccine, which is going to be more of a regular vaccine. And there's people have said, maybe you're not allergic to that so much when it comes out. I'll certainly try it, but if it's the spike protein, that vaccine also has to make the spike protein, I'm guessing. Otherwise, it won't work. So it's probably not going to help. I don't know. I just want the German government to pay me now for the days that anyway, I'm going to stop complaining now, just so you know why this is all late. I'm massively behind. I lost 4 days. I literally couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. Like I was, the headache was really bad. Like the day of the vaccination, I was like out. The second day, I was, I had light sensitivity so bad that I actually couldn't look at a screen. I was reading the whole day. Actually, one upside to this whole thing, I finished the Expanse novel series. I read the last book pretty much during the vaccination sickness. That was kind of good. I can recommend it. I like the way the series ended. It makes sense for the whole series. And I'm actually glad it's done now. I think it's run its course. And yeah, I can't say I actually really enjoyed the ending, of course, but that's par for the course. But Miller turns up again, and that's pretty cool. So I enjoyed that. Yeah, so I did. I couldn't like, and then later I was actually so those like Friday to Saturday, Saturday to Sunday, Sunday to Monday, Monday to Tuesday. So 4 nights in a row. I slept 12 hours or more in the night. And then through all those days, I slept in the day as well. I never take naps in the day. And I was tired. I was still tired and sleepy. I had like bags, like my wife was like, what the fuck's going on? I had like bags and shadows under my eyes. I looked like I hadn't slept. And I was like sleeping 12 hours. It's like this thing, just my body just does not like this thing at all, apparently. But anyway, so that's the that's Fab's vaccination story. Of course, what I want to tell you, that doesn't mean you shouldn't like that. If it's sensible for you medically to get vaccinated, get the fuck vaccinated. If you want to, it's I'm a believer in choice. I'm a believer in giving people choice. This is not a recommendation against getting vaccinated, because this is an allergic reaction, and it's pretty rare. I actually looked up. To get in some of these symptoms that I've gotten is not that rare. Like it's like 1 in 500 or something. To get 1 or 2 of these symptoms, to get all of them must be pretty fucking rare. As at least from what I've read in the documentation for these vaccines. Maybe I should do a study on me for allergic reaction against this shit. I wonder if that means that if I get the actual virus, which has the same spike protein, my body's probably gonna kill it pretty quickly, I hope, because it's got to freak out anyway. If it freaks out, I'm reacting to it. I think that's positive. Anyway, so don't make your vaccination choices dependent on me. That would be against the whole spirit of this whole show, right? This whole show is fighting for your right, not only to have something to hide, but also to get vaccinated or not. I don't want to presume anything. So please make your own decision. Anyway, that's that. So you know what happened to me. Let's get into the main topic that you're probably here for. Let's talk about the Cyberbunker verdict. Which happened on Monday last week. And it's this is interesting all around. I'm gonna go into as usual, privatecitizen.press. If you go there, there's the show notes. There's a link. I wrote a blog post about it. I wrote about this for Heise in German, but I also on my blog wrote an English version of this report, because I reported there on the original. When the trial started. I actually couldn't be there this time. I just didn't. Logistically, I had too much other jobs that I had to do. I just couldn't get to Trier in time. Otherwise, I would have been there again. But I'm gonna go through the verdict, and then I'm gonna go through what that. Well, first of all, I'm gonna explain what this means, why this is an important case. I talked about this last year, but you might have not listened to the show, might have forgotten, whatever. So this is important for German jurisprudence and the German. It's an important precedent, and I'm going to explain that first. Then I'm going to explain the verdict, and then I'm going to go into. It's not over, right? This verdict is actually not. I actually don't know what that word is. I should have looked that up before the show. So in German we have a word called rechtskräftig. So if you have a verdict, then the question: is this enforceable, final, enforce, legally binding? Yeah. So this is not legally binding yet because it will never be, because it's already been appealed by both sides, both the prosecution and the defense. So this means, just spoilers, this means this will drag on, right? This will go to the next higher court and probably even to the Constitutional Court. That's what the defense is saying they would do. So that just as a spoiler, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can expect going forward at the end. But before we get into all of that, I thought I might explain very quickly to bring you up to speed in case you don't know what this is about. So this whole story is very fascinating. So you should listen if you got the time. You should, and you haven't listened to episode 43 last year. You should pause this. There's also a link in the show notes, of course. But if you go to privatecitizen.press and click on episodes at the top, there's an episode link. You can find episode 43 and you can listen to that. But in lieu of that, if you don't want to do that, very quickly, I'll bring you up to speed what this case is about. This case is very fascinating. It's about several Dutch citizens, but generally one guy who owned an old bunker in Zeeland, in the Netherlands, and built a data center in there. And for him, it was kind of like a civil rights kind of thing, freedom, 90s hacker spirit kind of cyberpunk thing. Or that's what he maintains to this day. Anyway, he had this, it was called the Cyberbunker, right? There was a secure, bulletproof hoster that couldn't be raided by the police, whatever. In fact, the bunker was raided by the police, but kind of, more by the fire brigade. Basically, what happened is this guy rented a part of the bunker to some people who had, and that part of the bunker suddenly caught fire. A very, very, very hot fire that could only be extinguished after, I think, 2 days. Actually, this guy who owned all of this actually went to the hospital because they had to evacuate the data center. Turned out there was a meth lab there, or a drug lab, that I think it was meth, that burned down. He maintained that he didn't know that. He just sublet this anyway. He was never prosecuted for that. But the whole bunker was shut down, right? The whole the data center as well. So they moved the service to Amsterdam, actually. It was still called Cyberbunker, but it was just a normal data center in Amsterdam. Now, he was never indicted for this in the Netherlands, but he lost his ability to run a company there for a while. So now he was looking for a new bunker. And there's an old Bundeswehr bunker in Traben-Trabach in the Rhineland-Palatinate. It's on the Moselle. It's wine country, hilly country. It's very nice. And there's a big bunker there. And he went and bought that. And when he bought it, the mayor of the town originally was tipped off to this situation in the Netherlands and the questions about, the drug lab and that this might be illegal, whatever. But they couldn't, in the end, the mayor couldn't prevent this property from being sold. Basically, the Bundeswehr, the German army, wanted to sell this. They couldn't find anybody to buy this fucking bunker. They sold it for 750,000 euros. And that wasn't the only thing, but because whoever bought it had to maintain it, right? So this guy builds a data center in there. And, it was kind of, I guess he was being watched by the officials, but he brought a lot of Well, he promised to bring jobs to the area. Didn't really do that, but not that much. But so they built up this bunker, and nothing really happened for a while. And then a British, I think it's Irish maybe, tabloid, like a journalist there got a tip off that an Irish mobster called the Penguin, who was into the drug trade, was seen in Traben-Trabach, and she traveled there and she actually took photos of him, the mobster, and together with like these guys from the bunker having dinner, which alerted the German police. And then the cat was out of the bag. They wanted to surveil this mobster he had a bag of like 16 burner phones, and he would just use all of them and only talk code, and they survived everything. And there was the story that basically this mobster allegedly financed this bunker, right? And the guy who was running the bunker was actually developing crypto phones for him, apparently. I don't really know this. The German police is looking for the Penguin guy, but they haven't caught him. So they started surveilling the bunker, and they had when they set up the data center, they had a fiber connection put in, a big industrial fiber connection, and they started tapping into that, right? And they got they tapped into the traffic, and it turns out that there was like a few percent of the traffic was actually unencrypted, and this is a few years ago. It's already somewhat surprising to me, but there was some unencrypted traffic, and that was actually enough for them to get a warrant to eventually search the bunker. And you should really listen to episode 43. I go into this much deeper, and it's a really fun story. Basically, they got a informant into the bunker crew who was working as a gardener and as a man who did odd jobs, and he eventually said he was gonna quit his job because he had inherited money from his family, and he wanted to celebrate that, and he invited the whole crew. This was 2019, I think. He invited the whole crew to a restaurant in town in Traben-Trabach. And when they were in the restaurant, a huge group of SWAT teams raided the bunker and the restaurant at the same time, arrested the guys in the restaurant, raided the bunker, and actually got in there, got access to everything. And they got, and this will be interesting today, this was very interesting in the case. So they got the internal email system, which was largely unencrypted, like virtually unencrypted, which is amazing. So they got all the emails from the bunker crew within. I mean, this main guy was living there. Some other people were living there, and but also the whole communication with the clients now. And then this case started, right? And basically, there were, to get to today, there were two things the prosecution wanted to do. There's two main areas, like crimes they basically indicted these guys for. One is conspiracy, like a illegal it's kind of like RICO in the US, except it's not that big in Germany. It's like creating an illegal organization, basically. Now a crime, organized crime, being part of an organized crime organization. Basically, that was the one indictment. And the other one, which is much more interesting, is they wanted to, I should have looked all these terms up. God, I don't know legal terms. I'm not a lawyer, by the way. What's Beihilfe? Aiding and abetting, I think, or abetment. I think it's aiding and abetting. They're basically try to prove that these guys aided and abetted criminals. And that's in the last episode I talked about, so this was last year in November. They were starting the case, and they were saying it's going to last till December of this year, with I think 2 court days a week. Massive trial, huge trial, because basically what the prosecution needed to do is to prove that hundreds of crimes had been committed, right? Not by the defendants here, but by their clients. And then in proving those first, they could go and say, okay, now we established these are crimes, and now we're going to prove that they aided and abetted it, right? And that was the end goal. This is why this whole case took so long. Now, the big bummer for the prosecution in this case is that the judge, when the verdict came down, actually did convict all of the defendants, all 8 of the defendants, for forming a criminal organization. And, they got between, obviously don't know this by hand. I'm going to read this from my story here. That's also linked in the show notes. Where do we have this? So the main guy, Mr. X, was sentenced to 5 years. X is actually his last name, his first initial. Was sentenced to 5 years and 9 months in prison. The prosecution had demanded 7 years and 6 months. His eldest son, XO, faces 4 years and 3 months behind bars. Another 5 defendants were sentenced to prison terms of between 3 years and 2 years and 4 months. The court sentenced the 8th accused to 1 year imprisonment, which was handed out as a suspended sentence. Except for this 8th defendant, who was still considered a juvenile offender at the time of the arrest warrant, the defendants all had already been in pre-trial detention since September 2019. Except one guy who was actually let go in summer because he admitted some of the charges. So interestingly, they all got between 2 years and, the main guy, 5 years and 9 months. The guys with the 2 years and plus, if this was legally binding, right, this sentence, most of them would be let go in a few months because they were in pre-trial detention, which is going to be subtracted, right? But they actually, I don't know how this works actually, because if this keeps going through the courts, I think they'll stay in jail, even though this might take now 2 more years, 3 more years, whatever, since maybe even 5 years, depending on how far they go, until there's a legally binding verdict. And if they got if this holds and they end up with 2 and some years or maybe 3 years, they'll actually be longer in pretrial detention and then actually go to jail. So I think they stay in jail. I think the way it generally works, because there's no verdict, they have to stay in jail, and then if they get less afterwards, I think they get money, like a lot of money for every fucking month they're in prison that they weren't sentenced for in the end. So this is going to be interesting in the end. But don't take my word for it. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. I don't know how that works. I'd have to look that up actually for a future episode. But so they all got sentences. But the interesting thing here is that all those sentences were for forming a criminal organization, and they were all acquitted of all charges of aiding and abetting. Oh, I was going to explain why this is, I messed up my, the way I messed it up. I explained to you how I was going to do this and I didn't do it. But anyway, so this is very interesting because this case is so important because in Germany, we have a thing called provider privilege, right? And this is generally what the US calls safe harbor when it comes to providers. So in Germany, all kinds of telecommunication providers, and we're talking your ISP, we're talking your mobile provider, but also your hosting provider, right? They have provider privilege, which means that they don't need to check on you, right? So if you use their service to do something illegal, it's not their fault, and they don't need to check that. It's not their job, which I think is reasonable. That's the job of the police, right? And that ensures basic privacy, because if that wasn't the case, they would have to check everybody. Like they would have to listen into your phone calls. That your ISP would have to, do massive data retention, scan your traffic. Your hosting provider would have to look through your website just in case you're doing something illegal. They'd have to check, right? So that, because you don't want that, the law says until they get it, like, for example, if you host a website, right? Let's say somebody, there's a German hosting provider, let's say Hetzner, which is a big one, right? There's a big German hosting provider. Let's say somebody rents servers from Hetzner and puts up a Nazi website. That would be illegal in Germany, if there's swastikas on it and that kind of, the symbols that are actually, prohibited under criminal law. You'd be committing a criminal offense by doing that, right? Now, Hetzner doesn't know what's on the servers, even though if they're not, they don't have to be encrypted. Doesn't matter. They don't have to check. It's not their responsibility. But if somebody finds their website and goes, oh, there's a Nazi website, where's that hosted? And goes, oh, this is a Hetzner server, and then writes an email to Hetzner and says, there's like the Nazi website on one of your servers. One of your clients is hosting illegal content. Then Hetzner would have to they would have to investigate and have to look. Now, if this was like encrypted stuff, right, which a website would be, right? But if you're talking like chats or something, right, on a telecommunications provider, they couldn't actually check, and then they wouldn't have to. But they probably have to hand that on to the police, and they have to hand that on to the police anyway. But like they have to cooperate with the police, right? If the police goes, oh, this is clearly illegal, you have to shut that down, or you have to give us the information of your client. They'll have to do that. But the provider privilege says until they have somebody told them that something illegal is going on, they don't have to check, and they're not responsible. They're only responsible if they don't act on a report like this. And this is why the Cyberbunker case is very, very critical to German, the German rule of law, because this is the first time ever in Germany, in the history of German legal proceedings, that the prosecution actually went after a hosting provider for something their clients hosted, right? They also, with the data they got from this raid, they also went after a lot of the clients. There are like hundreds of lawsuits. I think what's the actual number? I can actually look this up. I have that in my story. There's 227 follow-up cases right now, but most of them have been closed because they actually couldn't find the clients, right? Because they're like anonymous or pseudo-anonymous, or they're not in Germany or whatever. So those are separate. That's what you would usually do. Like, even if you busted this hosting provider in cases in the past, they would have busted the hosting provider. They would have gone after the clients. They would have not gone after the hosting provider. Now, the state prosecution in this case says they knew what they were doing. They were clearly advertising towards criminals. They were in league with criminals, right? They were basically sponsored by this mobster, which isn't part of the case because they can't prove that, but that was the assumption, right? So they're criminals themselves, so we want to go after them. While this is clearly understandable, if you're like the state prosecutor, right, basically the DA's office, this would be in the US, that's clearly understandable. It is a problem because if they actually were able, if this verdict would have been that they had been able to prove that the hoster aided and abetted, then this would call the provider privilege into question, right? If that would have been the verdict, then you couldn't. Right now, there has been no verdict like that in Germany. So as a provider, you can assume that you're safe. That you have the provider privilege. It's been held up. It's been held up in actual legal practice. But if something like this happens and the legal practice turns, you'd have to ask yourself, what do we do now? Like, do we have to Scan, right? And this is not only hosting providers. Some people don't understand this I don't think anybody understands this in the general press. My esteemed colleagues in the more mainstream media don't understand this because they think it's like hosting only, which is like a thing that only nerds care about pretty much. I mean, who cares about hosting a website? But what they don't understand is this for example, applies to telecommunications providers, right? And if you go, okay, this is like, we're talking mobile providers, right? How many criminals do you think Vodafone, for example, just to pick a big company that does this kind of thing, I'm ISP as well, my ISP, still, until I get it fixed, until I go back to telecom. I mean, how many criminals do you think use, SIM cards from Vodafone or internet? Like, how many? There must be thousands of criminals in Germany, tens of thousands, probably. Like a substantial percentage of those, just because it's such a big company, will be using Vodafone. Like Vodafone had to worry about like suddenly like all these crimes, that they could actually be on the hook for. And we're talking criminal, we're not talking civil suits. We're talking people going to jail here. So this is a small hosting company with like 8 people, right? And they're all on trial. But like the main guy is on trial, the CEO of this company, Cyberbunker, whatever. So you'd be, as a CEO of Vodafone, you'd be suddenly worrying about this, right? Will I be on trial at some point? Because they'll go, you knew that this guy was using your cell phones. The terrorist was using Vodafone SIM cards to explode the bombs, right? So this is why this is a very important case. And this is why it's kind of, I would say fortuitous for all of us, not only hosting providers, because, I don't fucking care pretty much about Vodafone, whatever, but, the problem is this is also a huge implication for privacy, right? Because if all of these providers suddenly now have to look at, like, we now actually have to look into all this kind of traffic. We have to look at all the websites we're hosting. Then all of our stuff isn't private anymore. They suddenly have to do data retention. They have to look into, snoop into everything that's not encrypted, and probably do side channel attacks or whatever. Like the client side scanning on everything that is encrypted. Because they're legally on the hook. So this would be really bad. So I think for the general public, it's actually fortuitous that this ended up, the verdict not going that way. Now, of course, actually the defense said, okay, if the defense lawyer for the main defendant said, if they find my defendant guilty, I'm going to appeal. But before that happened, actually, the state appealed. The state appealed immediately. And I think they did appeal because they spent so much time trying to prove that these guys were aiding and abetting, and they couldn't do it. And they want this aiding and abetting charge to go through, which would be very bad news. And that's going to be the interesting part about this, the next court case we're going to have about this. And keep in mind, I'm no lawyer, but the main I'm going to try to explain why they couldn't prove the aiding and abetting. The criminal organization was basically, I think, their plan B to get these guys convicted anyway. That is relatively easy to prove because what you have to do there is you have to prove 2 things: that these people made money and kind of knew they were making money from criminals, and that they were an organization that were well organized. And since this is a company, and it was organized as a company, that's easy to do. And this whole thing hinges around so-called abuse emails. I explained to you how, if Hetzner, just picking a random company, if Hetzner hosts a website and somebody goes, hey, you are hosting illegal material there, then they have to cooperate with the police. They have to report this to the police, and they have to take it down and cooperate with the police and give them the ID everything they know about their customer, right? And if they don't do that, they have a problem. And that's actually what Cyberbunker did. In the internal emails, there is a lot of points where basically somebody wrote to them and said, look, here, there's, you're hosting a spammer here, or you're hosting an illegal marketplace here. And they actually didn't react, right? They ignored that. And in some cases, actually, so one case they talked about in this trial was the original Mirai botnet was hosted on these servers, or the command and control servers were. And there was this huge attack that I actually wrote about for Heise when, this guy tried to DDoS some routers, I think in the UK, and actually failed, and by accident DDoSed a massive number of telecom routers and a lot of personal home internet connections in Germany from the telecom went down because this TR69 protocol hack, basically this DDoS attack, backfired and took all these down, and that was a huge thing. Now, when this all happened, there were anti-spam services who were black holing these server command and control server IPs, and they were basically taking control functionality away from the guy controlling this botnet. And the Cyberbunker guys actually wrote him and tried to upsell him on like a premium service, how better to evade this kind of like black holing of his servers. So there's a case there that they kind of knew that there was something going on, and this is why they could prove criminal organization, because it is an organization, and they could prove that these guys kind of knew that there was illegal stuff going on. They were also on their website saying that, you can host anything here, we don't care. The only two things you can't host is child pornography and terrorism stuff. Basically saying all other illegal stuff we will take. Their service was more expensive than comparable other services. So, the prosecution argued these guys were advertising towards criminals. They wanted criminals as their customers. And they could kind of prove that. Now, the interesting part about aiding and abetting is that the burden of proof for that is a lot higher. There's some kind of like a double, I don't know, it's called like something like a double intention check or something. It's basically not only does the prosecution has to prove that not only these guys knew that something illegal was going on, but they have to actually actively work with that, right? So you have to so basically if you, the way I understand as somebody who's not a lawyer, how this works is, let's say somebody's robbing a bank, right? There's people robbing a bank, and you're a guy, you do IT, for the bank robbers, right? And let's go GTA, you hack there, you DDoS the server as a server of a surveillance company that runs like the cloud, service for the cameras in the bank. I'm just making all this up, right? If they want to prove that you aided and abetted the bank robbers, it's not enough to prove that you hacked those servers and that you knew that the bank robbers, were gonna be helped by this because, that was the company that was running the cameras in the bank. They also have to prove that you actually did this to aid the bank robbers, right? So there has to be some communication between the bank robbers and you, the hacker, going, we're going to rob the bank at 9 a.m. on Sunday, on Monday, whatever. Shut the cameras off at that time. And you go, yes, I will do that. And then you hack the service at that time. And you can kind of prove, well, he was kind of, he was in league with them. And what the court basically said is that, having these abuse emails and not reacting to it, or like trying to upsell this guy they could have upset him on a hunch that he was running the Mirai botnet, right? The prosecution wasn't able to prove actually, the guy saying, hey, I'm a customer of yours, I'm running this fucking botnet, and can you do something for me, right? It wasn't that clear cut, and it's the burden of proof for that is much higher. Now, since I wasn't there for the whole court proceedings, and I haven't read I think the judgment isn't out in text yet. So I'll do some more research into this, and I actually will come back if I find anything interesting, and give you an update on this. But like, what I find interesting is that they set out, with all the data they had from the unencrypted email servers and everything, like from the data center, right? I mean, the some of the stuff on the servers was encrypted, but a lot of it wasn't. I actually talked to the head prosecutor, like basically the DA, and he said he was actually surprised how much there wasn't unencrypted, right? But like, they had all of this data, and they knew going in, and they aimed for aiding and abetting. It's surprising to me that they couldn't prove that. But I think it has something to do with the fact that these guys, if you're a customer of a hosting company like that, and you call, you talk to them in email, you're using like, broad language, they could never nail down this penguin guy, with his fucking burner phones, even though they had them all bugged, because the guy would always talk about like his like, he was like allegedly importing, like, I don't know. I mean, I think they were flying cocaine to Spain, and then, or getting over by boat or whatever, and then getting it from Spain to Amsterdam, right? And that's how he allegedly knows this main defendant, because he used to do computers for him back in the day in Amsterdam, whatever. But he this mobster would always say like, oh, my tomato harvest is coming in on like in the harbor in the morning at like 9 a.m., right? So you wouldn't say like, you wouldn't be on the phone like, hey, dude, the cocaine's coming in tomorrow, right? He would talk about this fucking tomato harvest. So they could never actually prove anything from the phone calls, because the guy was always, on a obtuse about everything. And I think the same problem applies here, because nobody of the fucking clients from this bulletproof hosting company would go like, hey, I really want to run this darknet marketplace, right? Can I rent servers from you, right? And when they have a technical issue, my database is down, whatever, they wouldn't go, hey, the database for my illegal darknet server with like all the drug deals is down, and I'm losing money here, right? These guys don't do that, so that was apparently not enough. So they just didn't have enough on the email server, and they couldn't prove this. Which is interesting. That's very interesting to me, and it's really bad for the prosecution, I guess. And I think that's why they like appealed, right? Because I mean, to just prove what they proved, the criminal organization, like, they wouldn't have to have spent like, a year with all these court dates, right? Dragging everybody there like twice a week and doing all this shit, like, to prove all these different crimes, just to do that. Like, that would have probably been much easier. So I think that's why they're appealing. Also, this was an interesting setup. This was like the große Jugendkammer. So it's like actually the youth court, because one of the defendants at the time of the crime was still the juvenile defendant. And I think they didn't want to trial that guy separately. So if they lump him in, this actually had to be a juvenile court, at least partly. They had they had the main judge, but they also had they had a youth. In German courts, in youth courts, they have like these youth officers, right? So the judge, basically the law apply, like, if you're juvenile, so if you so he wasn't actually a juvenile as in under 18. He was between 18 and 21. I think that area is, but like whatever, like if you have a juvenile person, the laws apply the same, of course, right? I mean, if you kill somebody and you're like 18 or 17, it doesn't matter, you kill somebody. But they're like provisions in the law. So you have like this special law officials who are like, I mean, the judge hands down the sentence, but they take care that the judge understands all these specific, little details about, like, having a juvenile offender. There's things about if you're there as the press, right? So usually you can take photos of the defendants, but you have to, on my blog, there's a photo of the main defendant, but, you have to censor them. But like you can't even take photos of the juvenile defendants at all. Right, and there's all these special rules and all this kind of stuff. Also, we have in the German, I don't know what that is. In the German court system, we have something called Schöffen. We don't have juries, right? We don't have jury courts. In Germany, the judge decides everything. But it's called jury woman. That's wrong. Like it's lay assessor, maybe lay judge. So they're like a jury in the way that they're just normal citizens. My mother actually did it for a while at a juvenile court, actually. So you get picked. It's like a civic duty. You get picked. You have to go there for a certain amount of cases. And some people actually like to do it, and I think you can volunteer. But so you basically you assist the judge. And the judge has the final call, but before the verdict, the judge gets together with all the lay judges. Usually there are 2, I think. Depends on the proceedings and how many defendants. I think in this case there were 4, and there was a special one for the juvenile court. But they get together, and their rule is it's kind of like a jury light, right? They're supposed to put in an opinion as a lay person would, as a civic duty, right? As somebody just from society, and so they influence the judge, and they have certain ways of, certain duties and whatever. The judge has the final call, however, but it's a discussion there, and usually they very much like a jury. Not like a jury. In a jury in the US would say if somebody's guilty or not, right? So in Germany, the judge will say if they're guilty or not. But like the discussion is usually not about are they guilty or not. As far as I understand it, I've never been in one of these deliberations, of course, because never been in this position. I'm always in the courtroom as the press. But it's more about like the amount of time they go to jail and stuff like that. That the discussion happens. So what I think, what the prosecution did here, why they went and appealed, maybe because I don't know if they get actually like a juvenile court the next time. Maybe they'll just take the juvenile defender out of this. I don't know if you can do that. But I think they appealed because they spent so much time trying to prove aiding and abetting, and that didn't happen. And they want to do that. They now want to do that. I think this will go now to the highest court. I think this will actually be Bundesgerichtshof, possibly. So the highest criminal court. But because the defender has said they're going to go to, if they lose again, they actually will go to the constitutional court. And I think in Germany, of course, the constitutional court decides if they take a case, right? And in many criminal cases, if you have a murder case, usually they wouldn't end up in the constitutional court. But because this is such a legal precedent, and it involves pretty much any hosting provider of any telecommunications, any kind of thing in Germany, and also the privacy and civil rights of every citizen, pretty much, I think they would actually have a chance. I think actually the Constitutional Court would look at this. Of course, the next higher court here, the next thing this will go to, it will be another case. They will actually retry this, and it will all happen again. The Constitutional Court will be different. The Constitutional Court takes a verdict usually from another court or like a legal complaint from a layperson, but they will not have a trial, right? They're just, it's like the Supreme Court in the US. They look at the body of the law, and they look at the Constitution, and they'll deliberate and write a huge verdict, and then they just decide. But before that happens, if it happens, we'll have another court case here, and the defense seems to think they could get the defendants off. I don't, obviously I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a judge, obviously, and I don't even know much about legal stuff except from what I've written about and stuff like that. But I've certainly never studied it in university. The only thing I ever did, I was always eating with the law students because they had the best cafeteria at the university. So I would actually always walk. I say walk across town, but it's Bonn. It's tiny. I would just walk to it was called the Juridicum. The law students had their own building, and next to that was a cafeteria, and that was actually the best one of the whole uni. So we would never go to the main cafeteria. Me and some friends from history and politics, or English, we'd always walk over and go to the Juridicum and eat. And I actually talked to a lot of law students back in the day, just over lunch. But that's pretty much, everything I know. I know a little bit from politics and history about law, but that's pretty much it. But I think they'll be hard pressed to get them off. I think the proof for the criminal organization is there, right? I mean, they didn't even get the angle in with the penguin, and that was in the press. That was pictures in the press. They were eating lunch regularly with a known mobster. And then you have the shit from the servers and the emails, and I think they can prove that. I don't think they'll be getting off, is what I'm saying. Maybe they'll get a reduced sentence a little bit. I don't know. I don't think they walk free. But the interesting thing here is the aiding and abetting. I really hope that the prosecution won't be able, at the next higher court, to get that. If they get that as well, I don't care about these guys going to jail a bit longer. I think. I mean, the main guy, right? Even if you buy his, I did this cyberpunk kind of for civil, I'm not even sure if I'm buying that, for civil rights and all of that. But even if you're buying that, the guy's intelligent. He's like a nerd, right? He ran a data center. He must have known, right? I mean, I've never run a data center, but if I was gonna go, I run a bulletproof data center. I mean, how naive. And maybe he was very naive, but I don't think anybody can be that naive to technically know what you're doing there, and then not knowing that these servers would be used to run these kind of marketplaces where drugs are being sold, shit's being sold, right? I mean, you must assume that. It's like Roger Dingledine, who runs the Tor project. If he would go, he'd be at FOSDEM, he gives talks at FOSDEM regularly, and he'd be there and saying, Tor has never been used for anything illegal. Right? He never says that. He says, he doesn't say we know Tor is being used for anything illegal, because he can't know that either. Otherwise, Tor wouldn't work correctly. But like he goes, yes, of course the police has a point. We assume, yes, that people are using this for something illegal, but it's a tool, right? It's like you can't outlaw kitchen knives because, I mean, if you look into the legal history of your country, it doesn't matter where you are, right? If you look at murders, and if you look how many murders are being committed with kitchen knives in your country, it's got to be the same as in Germany. It's a massive amount of murders. You know, it's usually like blunt trauma, like somebody hits somebody over the head with something heavy. That's the number one. You know, like a big, strong, hard, heavy thing that's on you, like something you put on your letters or something that you put your glass on or whatever. Like I've got this big stone thing that I put, you know, that's basically where I put my glasses on. I mean, if you hit somebody over the head with that correctly, they're dead, like correctly, you know, the right way or the wrong way, depending on how you're looking at it, they're dead, right? And that's, I think, number one. And then number two is kitchen knives. But you can't like outlaw kitchen knives because of that. So, you know, that's what Dingeldine always says, right? You can't go and outlaw Tor because people using it for something illegal. There's journalists using it. There's dissidents using it. There's very important use for Tor. But he wouldn't be as naive and as dumb to go like nobody has. I can't even imagine somebody using Tor for something illegal. And this is kind of like this guy going like, oh, we didn't know. Like you might like best case. And I don't believe this, but best case, I believe you that you didn't know, but you'd had to assume, right? You can't be surprised. And I mean, the guy in his defense, he's basically, you know, in his defense statement, you know, and his lawyers, you know, he was basically saying, you know, he wasn't saying the word, but he was saying, I've provided privilege, right? He was saying, even if there's something illegal, like I can't be made to look. I can't be made to assume it's illegal and look. Like, you know, he was basically I think his lawyer said it's like a bank secure vault in a bank, right? Where you rent that. Like that's been used in every fucking heist movie there is. They put the shit in like a bank vault. Right, in a bank, you know, in a secure compartment in a bank, right? You can't, like, as a bank, you're not responsible for looking into these things. I mean, you have to assume that there's illegal shit in there, but you can't check. Like, that's not your job, and, you know, privacy and people's rights. And he was basically saying the same thing, right? But that doesn't jive with basically advertising on your website that you allow illegal content and, you know, host anything here except like child porn, whatever. That's like a bank saying, hey, our secure compartments are really good if you want to hide drugs in there. Like, we won't check. You know, that's, I mean, that wouldn't be illegal, but it certainly doesn't help your defense that, you know, because he was basically saying we're like a bank in that respect. But then the prosecution said, well, you're not really, because you advertised to criminals and banks don't do that. Although, you know, banks launder a load of money illegally a lot of the time. And they kind of know that, and they're the big part of their, maybe I'm destroying my own argument here. I don't know. Astral C says, you saw in the UK you need to be over 18 to buy a kitchen knife. No, I didn't, and that's dumb. I mean, that's it. That's ridiculous. I mean, we have ridiculous shit like this as well. My my brother-in-law is a cook, right? And they're like, for example, you're not allowed in German public transport to have a knife, which is ridiculous because, I mean, you know, let's say I have a pocket knife, right? I carry this pocket knife. I wouldn't be allowed to carry this in, you know, it's a It's just a normal hunting little like foldable pocket knife, right? And I wouldn't be allowed to carry this, I think, in public transport. But how would they know, right? They're not allowed to check me. Like even the police can't just go, let us check your pockets, whatever. I'm like, no. Like, on what grounds? Oh, you look suspicious. Yeah, right. Okay, let me just call my lawyer. That it is just ridiculous. But like, my brother-in-law was actually once checked because he had a big box with knives in it. And they were like, why do you have these knives? And it's like, I'm a cook, right? Actually, he was transporting them from his workplace to get sharpened. It's ridiculous. These laws are dumb. Like, I'm not saying these laws don't exist, but like they're dumb, right? So maybe that was a bad example. But let's say hammers, right? You can kill somebody. You can kill somebody more easily with a hammer, like one of these normal little hammers that you just put nails in the wall, right? It's easier to kill somebody with that than with a knife. With a knife, you'd actually, like, if I just stick a kitchen knife into somebody just randomly, they're not dead. It hurts a lot, they're bleeding, but like sticking a kitchen knife into somebody's heart is actually quite, you could cut their throat, I guess. But I mean, also that, if you don't do that right, you have to hit their jugular. I mean, it's not that easy. With a hammer, you just hit them on the head. Like, and if they're not dead, you hit them again, and you hit them again. Like, even with a small hammer, you can just, like, because the point of impact is relatively small, you can just hammer their head, like their skull in. Like, it's probably really easy. So let's outlaw hammers. Like, let's outlaw anything that looks like a stone, because I could hit somebody over the head with that. It's like, it's ridiculous, right? And so that's what they were saying, that, like, this Tor. That was my argument. It's like a tool, right? And the same argument goes for a hosting company, right? You can't. That is a good argument. You can't have these guys legally required to check just because someone could do something illegal. But I think it's a common misconception. It's a very common misconception about laws generally. I had this a lot. So with the immunity passports, right? We talked about I have the yellow, immunity passport thing, right? So if you post a picture of that, right, on Twitter, of like my vaccinations, right? People go, don't do that. People could fake the passport, right? They could use that to fake their own passport. And some people actually, I've done this, and people actually try to claim that was illegal, posting a picture, which is completely idiotic. And also the thing is, like, people could use that to make a fake passport is idiotic, because yes, they can. That's right? And there's also the argument that, like, these are really easily faked. They probably are. But, like, what people don't understand, like, legally, and also, I mean, the law is like this because it makes sense. What protects you or the society from faking documents like this is not that they're hard to fake. It's that if you do that, you go to jail. And, I talked about, they changed the law for this in Germany. You go to jail for 2 years now if you actually fake. So it's not like you don't need to protect society from not posting pictures of this, because to fake this is trivial. You can download the fucking, you can buy like the empty passports. You can just buy them because they're not government documents. You can just buy them, and then there's just a little sticker from the vaccine, and there's a date that's entered by hand, and the other thing is just a signature. I mean, if you look at the show notes episode, what was this? Actually show what they look like, right? We have there's several episodes about immunity passports. Episode 74, I show what they look like, and with my first vaccination, and like how easy that is to fake. But that's not what protects you or anybody. What protects these from being faked is that you go to jail if you do. I had the same thing when I wrote my first editorial for CT. So CT has this thing, has an editorial, and any editor who wants to and has a good idea can write an editorial. And if you do, it's like typed on a page, and they have a very interesting style that looks very different from the rest of the magazine. I don't know if it's still the same way, but it's like you sign it, right? And when I did this, there was all like these CT editors. So I did my first editorial, and they needed like a signature, right? And I did a signature to put on there. They're like, "That's your real signature. You can't use that." And I'm like, "Why not?" And they're like, "Yeah, but like somebody could fake a document with that." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course they could." Right? And your signature is invariably out there, right? If you sign a contract and you scan that and send that to somebody, or you just send them the contract, they have your signature. Signatures are really easy to fake, right? That's not they're like, oh, somebody will just buy washing machines and send them to your place. And I will go, yeah, of course, right? But like, they'll have to prove, when it comes to a legal thing where I go, like, I never ordered this washing machine, the guy who sold it will have to prove that it was actually me, and that was my actual signature, right? And if I go, well, it looks exactly like the one from CT that anybody has access to, like, they can't fucking prove that. Like, people don't understand how the law works sometimes. They're like, it's not about your signature being that's like security by obscurity, right? It's not about your signature never being out there, and so it can't be faked. It's about doing that, faking that is actually illegal, and you will go to jail. They take that very seriously, right? So I recently talked about the Drachenlord and the one guy who, that YouTuber that gets trolled a lot, and that one troll who actually kept order. He bought him like a gaming PC with like stolen credit cards and whatever. He went to jail because credit card fraud and like buying shit with other people's money and pretending, somebody else has bought it. That like you fucking go to jail for that. So that is the thing. But I can't remember where I let off with this. But like, well, that's the same. That's the same misunderstanding. It's kind of a misunderstanding of the law, and I think this applies to this situation as well. In that people don't understand like this tool metaphor correctly, and they also, they will argue. Like some people, I've actually seen people argue publicly about this case that hosting providers should check that stuff on their servers is not illegal. And you're like, you don't understand the implications of this. Like, if that goes into law, that means they have to spy on everything. Right? And then, but these same people then think like, but not on my stuff because I'm clearly not doing anything illegal. Like, no, you don't understand. They don't have to automatically do this. It's like, it's ridiculous. The people saying it can't be faked are really not trusting other people. COVID crazies. Yeah, well, that's I actually ran into people. I don't want to use digital certificates, like vaccination certificates, for the simple reason, I think I mentioned this on the show before, I just don't want to make it easy, right? I don't want this process to be easy for me, because I would never want to get used to the fact that if I want to go, so today I went to the hardware store, like to go in there, I need to prove my vaccination status. I think this is absurd. And it's COVID 1984. It's fucking George Orwell. And I don't want to get used to fucking George Orwell. So I want to make it as hard for me as possible. And I want to make it as hard for the other person as well, for that very reason. And, just if they have to manually check my paper thing, then they can't like put that in a database automatically. When they scan a certificate, they can do that on their end. So I don't want to make that easy. But I've run into places now where they're like, we only accept digital certificates, which you're not. Well, originally the legal understanding was that you're not allowed to do that because you can't. And the basis for that was that you can't. You can't have people have to use a phone or a computer. Like people have to be able to to be a German citizen without having a phone or a computer. But now they're saying, well, you can get the digital certificate and then print out a QR code and then take that, so you don't have to have a phone. But I actually went through this process for research purposes, and you get like this, you get a QR code. So I take my little yellow passport, I go to the drug store in Germany, and they go, all right, and they check that and check my ID, and then they issue me a certificate, right? But that's a QR code that I have to scan into an app, and then I get a different QR code, and I could print that one out. But the original one I get, I can't use for just proving that for whatever reason. And I don't understand why that is. Actually, I did a lot of research into that. I couldn't figure it out because, hey, it's open source, right? The whole thing is open source. Yeah, except the fucking algorithm that, the whole project. I mean, I talked about the digital certificates on the show, right? On that episode I mentioned. No, that was actually not that episode. Let me just check. This was episode, not to mislead you. Was it? How the immunity passports. Isn't that what? Where did I do that? Wait, now I have to check every episode manually because I can't. I think it was on how the German immunity passport was hacked, episode 79. But anyway, I talk about the certificates, whatever, and that explains why they're not secure, because you can make a fake drugstore, and then you can sign your own, and they can't revoke those. Once they have no mechanism to revoke them, so they're actually not secure. And also, that part of the system isn't open source, so fuck them. Is it device locked? No. It's not. Like you can use all kinds of apps as well. It just needs to use that one, whatever Uberg or whatever the company with IBM, the Holocaust organizers. They are also organizing the COVID. It cracks me up. The digital certificates. Well, like it's not, but it's like you need that. You need something to scan that one. You get this one QR code, you need to scan that in, and then you get another QR code. So the argument is now that you can just use the QR code because you don't need a phone for that. But I think you need a phone. I don't know. But anyway, so there's people claim that they only accept those because they're not as easily faked. Because that's what a lot of my a lot of my colleagues in the media who have no fucking clue what they're talking about, reported for months, or even they're still saying that, which is bullshit, because the Chaos Computer Club it wasn't the Chaos Computer Club, it was some independent security researchers. I talked about that on that episode, but the Chaos Computer Club publicized it. Like on day one, they proved how to hack it. And not only that, but like all those, like basically what you do is you make a fake drugstore, and then from the German Drugstore Association, you get your fucking, you get a certificate that you can use to sign these certificates, and they can never revoke that. So you sign like 5,000 fake vaccination certificates, and they can never revoke these. But I think somebody did one for Adolf Hitler, and that's still around, like because they can't revoke it. So Adolf Hitler is still vaccinated and can go into the hardware store. But anyway, so I think that's just people don't trust people, and people generally don't understand the law. So what this means is that we have a verdict. In this case, I think is sensible. Personally, I think this is a sensible verdict. But of course, it's not legally binding, and we will get a whole different court case. And of course, I'll keep you up to date once that starts, or even before it starts, when we know when it'll start, what'll happen, what the setup is, where it's gonna be, and then I'm gonna follow that as well. And then, probably 2 years from now, we'll have another verdict. And, then we'll have to see if that verdict will stand, or if it. I think that verdict will be, if I understand this correctly, because I think that will then be the highest court. That verdict will be legally binding. But if they then complain, if the defense then goes to the constitutional court, I think the way it works is you have a legally binding verdict, and then you appeal to the constitutional court, and then they decide. And then they can overturn that verdict. But until then, it's legally binding. SOC still about the. I mean, I talked about this on that episode with the certificates. Is the validation business done with the government database? No, it's an algorithm. Basically, he says because QR is just text most time. Well, basically, it's a public-private crypto system, right? It's just the QR code is just a fingerprint of a certificate. But what I don't understand is what you get from the drugstore, and I haven't been able. Actually, did some research. I haven't been able to figure that out, and I haven't found anybody who's written about this. To a technical level where that was understandable. So if anybody finds anything like this, please let me know. Contact me. Go to privatecitizen.press, contact link. Let me know if you have some documentation on this. So basically, I think what happens is, or what I know happens is, you go to a drugstore, you show them your yellow vaccination passport, right? And what they code into there is, and they make a certificate for each vaccination separately. And what they code into there is when you were vaccinated, what the vaccine was, what the vaccination was against, and possibly, I don't think they code in who vaccinated you, but like they just check that there's a signature or whatever, and they go like, okay, I was vaccinated. And that information gets signed. Right? And what I assume is that the QR code you get at the drugstore includes that information encoded, somehow, like, I don't know, ROT 13 or whatever, includes that information and the that information signed as a blob with a reference to the signing certificate that signed it, from the drugstore, as in the public part of the public-private key, and they obviously keep the private key. I don't know why that has to be like kind of separate, and then I don't know. Your phone, like if you put that in an app, it must do something. It creates a different QR code. I mean, I can look at the two QR codes and they're different. And you can't scan the one you get from the drugstore when you check. It then creates a QR code that is checkable, right? That says, okay, this is still valid. That is the important part. But I'll have to. I don't know. I probably have to do some more research, but I've got too much work to do right now to do that. But maybe we can. I'm feeling here that we have to do another episode on that and figure that out. But anyway, so we'll see. We'll see. There's some. So we had a verdict. To wrap this up, we had a verdict. But the and the decision was as I would expect it. It was sane, but the big question is still up in the air because it's not legally binding. And the question is, can they get these guys for aiding and abetting, which would create a problem for the provider privilege, right? And then we'd have to. I don't know what happens if we have a verdict where that calls the provider privilege in question. We'd probably have to have a change of the law, I would think, if the government wants to prevent this. That providers actually have to check. I guess because the provider privilege is not written in law, right? It's an understanding of the law. It's like an understanding of the body of the law and of all the verdicts up to this point. And that's then lawyers interpret that and judges interpret that as, the provider has this privilege. So it's like between the lines. This is how a lot of like laws, especially in Germany, in a Roman inspired, civil law kind of situation, how that works. The problem is like if that gets called into question, right? Then you'd actually the government would have to put that into law, right? That they have to say, okay, providers are actually not. They cannot be held responsible under criminal law. I just don't know if they want to do that. The other option would, of course, be if then people appealed to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court would either like overturn the verdict, or I think they could probably also, as you understand, I'm not a lawyer, but like they could let that verdict stand and still just like have a verdict of their own, where they go, okay, this case was as decided as it was, and these guys have to go to jail for that time because of this decision, but we are of the opinion that this does not mean that providers have to check, blah blah blah, right? That would be the other option. Anyway, I'm gonna keep you up to date on this because it's very interesting. It's yeah, and once again, this is a very German thing. Like it's a legally, the German thing. I mean, I talked about the Cyberbunker case originally because of this, but also because it's just a very interesting case. And it was like basically that was like a true crime podcast, that one episode. I really like talking about that. But of course, you always have to understand that when something like this happens, it gives people ideas, right? So if the prosecution in Germany, if the state in Germany goes, hey, let's prosecute these providers, you can think that people in the UK or whatever, or in France, get the same idea. I don't think this reaches as far as the US, because I think the legal situation there would be extremely different. I think it would already be different in the UK, but I don't know. I think in the US I wouldn't be. This kind of safe harbor is more protected over there. But then on the other hand, it's really not that helpful to protecting privacy rights, because even though it is generally accepted that providers can't be held responsible, so they don't have to spy, in the US you have different laws like the Patriot Act and whatever, so the government just spies directly anyway, and they can send national what's that letter, basically the gag order, national intelligence letter, whatever it is, national security letter, where they basically, they'll have to comply with the government and install, spying hardware, or like even have people looking into people's traffic, and then they just like the company can't tell anybody. So yeah, but like I expect that this is gonna have legal repercussions, or political repercussions maybe also throughout Europe. It's gonna be interesting. So I'm gonna keep an eye on this, but that's it for now. Let's get into the feedback section. And for today, I have compiled some feedback on episode 100, where I did a special episode telling you a little bit about myself. And I was a little bit anxious about that. I didn't know if that was going to be taken as like a huge ego trip, whatever. I explained why I did it but it seems to have been, but you explain it, and you never know if that's gonna work, if people still understand. But it seems to have been very well received. I got a lot of positive feedback, a lot more than I get for normal episodes generally. So and some very nice feedback, some very also feedback that made me happy I did that episode, especially this first email I received from Haley. I wanna highlight because this kind of warmed my heart. Haley says, "Loved the show. Just wanted to say I could really relate when you said you were getting in fights in primary school and your mom scared you so much you were afraid to stand up for yourself later in school. My primary school said if I got in one more fight, I would be expelled. My mom told me that if that happened, they would send me to a boarding school and I would only see my family and friends on holidays. After that, I was too scared to stand up for myself for fear of the repercussions. I wound up getting bullied a lot in secondary school because of this. Felt good knowing someone else knows what this is like." And first of all, thanks, Haley, for, telling me that about yourself, and, that the show kind of helped you. But also, it's this kind of the same thing to me, because I always thought this was like a singular experience that I had that was very special about me. But in hindsight, of course, that is dumb, because, any experience you have, probably another human being had before you, probably hundreds. And it seems I wasn't the only one. It seems Haley had a very similar experience. I'm kind of saying that as if that was a good thing. But I hope, as you can hopefully could tell by that episode, this experience in school made me what I am. And I don't want to miss that, because, a lot of what I'm doing here is directly because of that. I do podcasts because these days I'm very confident. And that only happened because I was bullied in school. And I probably would have stopped doing Linux Outlaws back in the day without that experience, because, doing a podcast in the Linux community, you get some very, 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 very strong feedback sometimes. And, if I was more faint of heart, I would have probably taken that to heart and stopped doing the show. And I didn't, because of my experience in school. So I hope that Haley had I hope you had something similar, that you took something away from that as well, and it just made you the person you are now. And so, I'm usually not that positive, but I really believe this. In this way, even negative experiences become something positive, because they become part of you. And I wouldn't look back at my school time saying that was a positive experience, but in the end, it all turned out for the better. And I hope the same thing happened with Haley. On the forum, Yevgeny Kuznetsov, aka Necros, on the forum, said the following thing about episode 100. I wholeheartedly agree with the go travel advice. I didn't have a chance to live abroad for a year in my high school days. I only got a month in Sweden, really close geographically, but far enough culturally those days. So Yevgeny is from Russia. And I envy you, but I dread the idea that I could not have gone abroad at all like many of my peers. Lack of the perspective and experience I received there would have made me a much lesser person, that's for sure. Yeah. And, I speaking to you, I think that was one of the reasons the Cold War was so horrible as it was, especially for people in Soviet countries, because they could only go visit Soviet countries, because unsurprisingly, the communists, the socialists, or whatever you want to call them, were afraid of people. They were afraid of exactly of this effect. They didn't want people to go to the West and see that, there's a different culture there and maybe it's better, right? And that's not to say, like, stay there, but, like, take that back, take some aspects of that back and go, look, other countries do other things differently. Maybe we should change a bit. And that's what, my time in Australia gave me. They gave me very much, and understanding a little bit of what things are like in Australia, but it puts perspective on your own country, and you suddenly see things in your own country that are maybe not the best, and or that could change, and that's what they didn't want back then. So that shows you, in a free society, we have this freedom to go somewhere, and we should. It doesn't have to be a year. I mean with this go travel, do it now. Well, it's kind of hard right now, which is why I fucking hate all of these restrictions and all this. But, there's no, the internet has opened our ability to talk to people from other countries, which I very much also embrace and I think is really good. But to going somewhere and experiencing different countries for yourself, there's really no substitute for that. And if people don't do that, they become insular and they become really dumb. If I meet people in my personal life, right, and at parties or whatever, you meet people, and they invariably, if I talk to them, they fall into two categories. There are those people who have traveled extensively, and those who don't. Those who've stayed in Germany, and I always get along better with the first kind, with the people who traveled. I think they're more intelligent. I think they have a better view of what the world is like. They're not as fixed on them and theirs and their little sphere of influence, right? They have a more healthy understanding of what the world's like. They're usually less xenophobic. That doesn't go for everybody, but I think generally, yeah, traveling is good. Anyway, Yevgeny continues. Oh, and don't expect many invocations of Stalinism in the same vein as you invoke the Third Reich from us Russians. In Russia, it is actually illegal and punishable by jail time to equate Soviet Russia and Nazi Germany. And if something you say can be taken as an insult to our grandfathers who fought the Great War, saying things like they fought for a questionable cause or they did horrible things in that war, is certainly viewed as the said insult in courts. It's up to 5 years behind bars. Go figure. I think this is really sad, actually. In Germany, there was very famously the Historikerstreit, the argument of the historians, where basically German historians concerned with modern German history fell into two camps. One camp said there's nothing comparable to what the Nazis did. And the other camp said, well, if you look at what Stalin did in Soviet Russia, there is actually, it's not the same, obviously, but it is comparable in certain respects. I actually fall into the second category. I think, yes, it is comparable. It's not only Stalin and the Nazis. There's Pol Pot, there's other genocides, but especially Stalin and the Nazis, millions of people died under both regimes for different reasons and differently. But, there were concentration camps under both regimes. There were both totalitarian regimes. One was a fascist regime. The other one was a socialist regime. They are inherently comparable, I would say. And a country who outlaws this, actually, that's really unhealthy. And the second part of the law is just even worse. Just imagine, from a Russian perspective, right? Just imagine it would be illegal in Germany to say that what we fought for in World War II was questionable. Well, it's actually illegal to do the other way around. It's illegal. Well, it's not illegal to deny that. It's illegal to deny that, the Nazis killed millions of Jews, which, I don't understand why that's illegal, really, because it's just common sense. Anybody who denies that is a fucking idiot. But, that's really unhealthy. Stalin did horrible things, right? And even the Soviet Union got to, under Brezhnev and, perestroika and all of that. They, Gorbachev, they got to a point where they started to admit that, right? Not admit it outright, but started a general understanding in the population that, starving millions of Ukrainians because Moscow needed fucking grain, and you fucked up the way you distributed grain because of your fucked up social policies, was not a good thing. Yeah, it's regrettable. Actually, I have a recommendation. I know lots of people will have seen this. I'm very late to the party. I just didn't get around to it. Last week, I actually bought on Amazon. I bought Chernobyl, the miniseries, HBO miniseries, which is superb. I'm somewhat of an amateur historian when it comes to Chernobyl. It's been a very interest of mine for years. I've read a lot about it, so I know a lot about it. And that miniseries is amazing. Not only because it stars Stellan Skarsgård, who's one of my favorite actors, but it also the other actor who I really like, and now is it Jared Harris, the guy who played. People will be shouting at me. God, what's wrong with my brain? I need more Freud. The guy in The Expanse, the Belter guy. Fucking, what's his face? Is it Jared Harris? Oh, God. Yes, it's Jared Harris. Who did he play in The Expanse? Why am I so dumb? Anderson Dawes. He's an amazing actor. I never really... He wasn't on my radar before he was Dawes in The Expanse. I've probably seen him in other things and didn't recognize him later. Wow, he played Ulysses S. Grant in the Lincoln thing from Spielberg. He's amazing. Him and Stellan Skarsgård, they do an amazing job. But the whole series is really well done. Its attention to detail is minute. There's like YouTube videos where like the scene where like when they have to the liquidators, they have to like shovel the graphite off the fucking roof with the 15,000 Röntgen, and there's video of that, right? Actual video, footage from back then, and you watch them side by side. The costumes are just spot on. The way they filmed it is spot. It's so good. The whole thing with the German robot, it's so good. But they have a really good spin on that whole story. I mean, it's depressing as fuck, right? If you're faint of heart, don't watch that. Like, it's depressing as fuck. I just can stand it because I know the story, because I've been interested in it for ages. But it's well done. It's good acting, and the spin they have is like they. There's this theory that Chernobyl was one of the things that caused the Soviet Union to fall because, they fucking lied about everything, and just the way they continuously talk about how they lied about that kind of thing. And that's actually one of the, so I read when we get back to SARS-CoV-2, right, after the pandemic, I read this thing on Telepolis the other day, Heiser blog kind of thing. The very interesting and well written dissection of like the German response to the pandemic compared to like the German Democratic Republic back in the day, right? The socialist Germany. And there are a lot of stuff we said was bad about socialist East Germany back then. Actually kind of happened now in West Germany with the pandemic, which some of that I agree, but this guy's obviously like a communist inspired kind of dude. And his takeaway in the end is that if we were just communist now, capitalism is the problem and everything would be better. But like if you watch, the same week I read this, I watched like Chernobyl, and it's like you understand like, how they dealt with that disaster. If you imagine the Soviet Union was still there today and they dealt with the virus, they would just deny it exists. Like they're on the fucking reactor explodes, and the main guy that runs the power plant, like in the morning after, they're all gathering, and you can see like the half, like one of the reactor blocks is like gone. It's exploded. It's all over the place. And he goes like, nah, the reactor didn't explode. That was like a hydrogen tank. And everybody goes like, so what's the radiation? Yeah, 3.6 Röntgen. Because the dosimeters they had back then, where they had at the plant, went to 3.6 Röntgen, and then that was the maximum reading. And then they get the expensive one out of the safe and then turn it on, and it immediately shortens out. They're like, oh, it's broke. Nah, it wasn't broke, mate. It's just too much radiation. And there's the unbelievable scene where this one guy, where he goes, okay, you send one of your soldiers in this lead truck, but tell him, the lead plating will probably not help enough. And, they're basically saying he might die, or he's probably going to get really sick. And then the general goes, I'll do it myself. He climbs into the fucking truck, and he drives there. And then there's this scene where they're all sitting in the tent, and then he's back, and he's like, it's not 3.6 Röntgen. It's 15,000. It's really well done. Anyway, that's a good study. That whole series is a good study for the Soviet regime and what the problem with it was. Because if it turns out, if you just classify everything, and the people running your reactor don't know what happens if they push the shutdown button, because you classified shit that you didn't like because it wasn't putting your regime in a good light, then that's how you get reactors to explode. It's a good series. I can completely recommend it. Anyway, let's move on with the feedback. Where are we? That was Yevgeny. Oh, we have got Barry Williams, aka Buzzer Will, also on the forum said, firstly, I was thinking regarding travel and living abroad in your formative years. This is also about episode 100, of course. How do you think the country you travel to affects the outcome? I would expect there to be more similar outcomes than different, but for example, you're unlikely to pick up Australians' colorful language if you spend a year in Mormonville or Salt Lake City, Utah, in the US. I don't know. I suspect there might be swearing a lot more in Salt Lake City than you'd expect. I don't know. I've never been there. Just wondering if you are still in touch with any of your fellow students who may have traveled to a different country. Not really. I'm not in touch with a lot of people, especially also from Australia from back in the day. And yeah, you're right. I mean, if you go to a different country, you have different experiences. But like, if I should boil it down, I don't think it matters that much where you go. I think the important part is, if you do something like me, where you're a year abroad, I think the important part is that you go somewhere where you can fully assimilate. Like my thing was, I was good in English already. It took me a few months to adjust to actually speaking English every day, to the Australian brand of English and to all the special ways the society works. But if you can put yourself in the society, like if you can assimilate a little bit, that's key, because you will. It's not so much about I love Australia. I love Australians. There's a reason I wear a Cobra almost every day. I'm still a very German person, but I've also, like, Australia had a massive influence on me. Like, probably the way I deal with shit, like the pandemic and stuff like that, where I'm just a little more not so afraid as other people. I think a lot of that I got from Australia, from living in a Queensland bungalow, and like the fucking typhoon, like fucking hurricane comes along, right? And you're just like, right, all right, if we're blown away, mate. Nothing we can do now, mate. It's just, just have a beer. I mean, if you get whacked over the head with a shed while you're drunk, you're as dead as if you're sober, so might as well get a beer. It's just that had a big influence. But I think generally what it does if you're in another society and you can actually live there, you're not like you don't understand the language or whatever. But even then, I was like in Spain for a month now, and I took away or like 3 weeks. I took away a lot there, and I don't fucking speak Spanish, but like you realize how people behave differently, and like the food in the supermarket is different. Like the fashion is different. You assimilate certain things. You learn things. You have experiences. And the more you can, because you speak the language, the better. And what that actually does, it gives you, I think, it gives you another perspective on your own culture. And that's the important thing, right? That you realize, which you can realize intellectually if you read on the internet, but it's different if you feel it. You realize that other countries, other people, other cultures do things differently, and you at first you think, what the fuck, but you see that it also works, and that gives you like more flexibility in the head, right? And you get more tolerant towards people who do things differently and who live differently, and normal Germans, like the neighbors are too loud, and then you live in fucking Portugal for a year, and you're like, what do you mean? It's a party. Right? It's like that I feel is the important thing. That is like the thing you take away. So I think in the end, it doesn't really matter that much where you are. It's more important that you feel this. People do things differently. I always have to think of like Dave, Geek Radio, Mega Slippers, Dave, who had this thing about German bathrooms when he visited me for the first time. He's like, what the fuck? You have like normal power plugs in your bathroom right next to your sink. Because apparently in the UK, they're deadly afraid of that. You might stick your hand and then you die. And they've been in German bathrooms like this for 200 years. And you're like, nah. Turns out you don't die. Turns out you can actually do that, and nobody dies in Germany from that. These little things, and I embrace those. I try to as best as I can. I think it's important. Anyway, Barry ends his message with, secondly, sudo mod probe. Man, that takes me back. That was the song at the end of episode 100. It actually made me emotional just listening to it. Thanks for the memories. I thought people might get a kick out of it. Good old fucking me trying to play a song, and it was horrible. And then Dan made a good song out of it. And we had so many versions. Maybe we can play some of the other versions. We had listeners. We had like, oh god, accordion versions, fucking Spanish guitar, heavy metal versions, 8-bit versions. Jazz, I had played a banjo version. We had a harmonica version. We had all these different versions. So I came up with most of the original melody. I mean, I botched it, but Dan made a melody out of it. But it kind of worked. And then, of course, at least I did come up with a name. So that's something I did. Anyway, I'll have to we have fucking, apparently, I'm going to have to cut this out of the show. We actually have some fucking spammers here in the chat, and I can't find the bot isn't. Now I have to figure out how to do this. I never do this because the bot always does this. Where do I, oh God. Okay, here you go. You are getting a ban. All right. That's sorted out. Fucking spammers. All right. Well, yeah, that was that for the feedback. Nice that people enjoyed that episode. If you have any feedback, go to the show notes, privatecitizen.press. There's feedback links all over. You can go to the forum, forum.fab.industries, but show notes also have a link, of course. And we have some good discussions there. People are really enjoying the forum. As Mike said last time, it seems to be coming along really well. So that's cool. But you can also, you can send me email. You can use anonymous contact forms if you want to send me some spicy material, whatever. It's all there. privatecitizen.press. That we come to the final part of the show. Toss a coin to your podcast, and I recommended Chernobyl. I also can recommend the second series of The Witcher on Netflix, which I've also finished. That is amazing. Some really good casting in that season, I thought. Especially Dijkstra. Oh my god, that was good casting. But also, Joey Beatty from season 1 is Jaskier again, and he sings. That's where this toss a coin to your Witcher comes from. And some good performances in that season as well. I really, really, really enjoyed that. But what this segment really is about is you, the people who support me, because I'm just a poor freelancer who doesn't gets knocked out by the vaccine and then doesn't get any money from the government or from his employer, because I don't have an employer. No, I'm actually really happy about that. But it's sometimes it's tough being a freelancer. And what helps a little bit is, people recognizing that they get value from the show, which we call the value for value model, as pioneered by John C. Dvorak and Adam Curry from the No Agenda show. Which roughly, you're not a listener, you're a producer. Well, if you just listen, you're a listener. That's okay. You can do that for free. You don't have to feel bad. But if you want to become a producer, you can either send me feedback, which could be feedback on episodes. You could also be, look, you're really annoying when you do that thing with your lips. Please stop doing that. I made that up. Do I do a thing with my lips? I say basically a lot, I think. Basically. But I'd say a lot. We can't fix that. I've been trying that for years. Doesn't work. But you could also give me ideas for further topics, send me material, all this kind of stuff. I appreciate it. I got some stuff over the recent months for some episodes I want to do, and I said I'm going to do them. Please be patient if you send me some stuff. I know it's just backing up, and I'm busy as fuck, but thank you. So then you're a producer. You can also support the show monetarily. Some people need to do that, otherwise it's not worth for me doing it. So I thank all of the people who do that. Some of them are patrons on Patreon, which is like a monthly thing, which helps me a lot. So they're kind of my prime support base. Link is in the show notes at privatecitizen.press. Or you can, use PayPal. There's a PayPal address in the show notes as well. producers@fab.industries. You can PayPal money to that. And some people did this week, including John Chandler, who wished me a Merry Christmas. And I appreciate that. So Merry Christmas to you too, John. Thank you very much. All of you, you're helping out. You're keeping the show going. And you're making it worth for me to do it, and that's very important. So thanks. Thanks to Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Hathy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave, Michael Small, 1I11G, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Rodane the Insane, Jackie Plage, Philip Klostermann, IKN, Vlad, Bennett Piata, Tobias, Kai Sears, Sandman616, Fadi Mansour, Mode 7, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, Rizal, David Potter, Avis, Mika, Mr. Amish, Cam, Dave Umrish, Ricky M, Barry Williams, Jonathan, RJ Tracy, Captain Egghead, Rick Bragg, Robert Forster, Superuser, D, Astral C, No Reply, and aforementioned John Chandler. And we have a special Christmas shout out. Yes. If you request something, I might do it. And we had a request from Zach. who wishes his dad, Rodane the Insane, happy holidays. So happy holidays, Rodane. This is from Zach, who supported the show because he said you would get the kick out of that. And yeah, I hope this makes a little sparkle on your Christmas tree if you have one. I don't have a Christmas tree, but the imaginary Christmas tree. I don't bother with that stuff. Too much work to do. So thanks, Zach, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Rodane. And I have to also thank my Twitch subscribers because they also support the show. They also support everything, all the other shit I do on my Twitch channel, which is Foxtrot Alpha Bravo, Alpha with an F, like the NATO alphabet. So thanks to Mike the Dane, Jonathan MH _com or .com, Galtaran, Khalifa, Violet Hummingbird, Bacon the Pork, Mode 7 is unavailable, El Terrestris, Jim, IndieGameX, Redeemer F, Sandman616, and Stardew Lisa. Thanks to all of you. You're also supporting the show. As is Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk, British cloud hosting company. They provide the servers where you get these luscious audio files. So thanks to Bytemark. We appreciate you. You supporting privacy, free speech, civil rights. It's very important. And that's it. It's going to be another episode this year, probably next week. So after Christmas. So I'm going to take this opportunity to wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. Hanukkah. What's that thing from Seinfeld? Wait, what is that called? Shit, I forgot that. Is that the thing Kramer came up with? Festivus. Is that actually from Seinfeld? No, I think it existed before. Yeah. But I think I know it from Seinfeld. So happy Festivus. Whatever you celebrate. Happy holidays, and see you next week. And as usual, the theme song is Acoustic Roots of the show is Acoustic Roots by Raul Kabzali. And I'm going to play us out with a festive tune, because that's appropriate, called Deck the Halls, jazz version by Ennio Mano. So happy holidays. Maybe postpone the misbehaving until after Christmas. Have a happy time with your family. Don't fight. I know it's in some families it's traditional to fight over Christmas, but I don't know if you can help it. Maybe not. And I'll see you after Christmas. Until then, have a good time. Thanks. Sorry, I'm trying to type Aqua FPS and talk at the same time, which is Aqua is a hard word to spell for some reason. Thanks, Astral, for reminding me that it's Festivus. I didn't look in chat. I looked into Google. But thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to hand you on to Aqua. It's playing Tarkov, which should be playing really, especially if it comes to Jonathan. Yeah, he's playing Tarkov, and he's not playing Lighthouse, the new map, for some reason, but maybe he'll do that later. I'll hand you off to him, and I'll be getting the show out, and then I might not be stream anymore this year. I can't promise anything. If I have the time, certainly want to. I'm gonna do a little bit of a stream maybe next week, maybe a little bit The Witcher. I don't know. Certainly not gonna build that Blue Bricks set. I don't think I can. And I have enough time for that. So I'll do that in the new year at some point. It's a promise. I promise to do that, so I will. And yeah. Until then, have fun with Aqua, and thanks for watching. Thanks for being there. Thanks for everything. I appreciate you. I hope you have good holidays and a nice Christmas time. And if I don't see you before the new year, guter Rutsch, as we say in Germany, have a good slide. That's literally what we say. Have a good slide into the new year. Until then, thanks for watching.